Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the OK Grognard Show. It is Sunday, September 20th, 2020, 9:30 a.m. Central in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Sunday is Rules Retrospective Day, and we're going to take a look at something random from the first edition AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide. Random Rules Musing, we called it last week when we decided at the last minute we didn't want to decide, and now we've decided again. I took a glance back over last week's show to see if there was anything that I'd mentioned as being something we should revisit, and I didn't see anything toward the end. Oh, we'll get to that next week or anything like that, so we'll just figure we're starting fresh this week, and we'll go from there. What do we got here? Yeah, there's the old book. Lovely. Look at that. So we figured without the appendices, which I think start on page 192, we've got close to a couple of hundred pages worth of stuff. Dice bag. Dice bag. What did we do last time? Did we decide it was easy enough to roll percentage dice to count as 200 and roll a six-sider to decide whether it was going from 1 to 100 or 201 to 192, really. We'll just have to skip the high ones if we're going to stay in the... Plus, we're skipping the low ones anyway because of table of contents and stuff. Wouldn't do to do a whole show. I guess we could do a show on the table of contents. Do we really want to do that, though? What do we got here? Outdoor movement. This is something I should probably spend some time on. What is this? Travel in the known planes of existence, but that starts on the previous page. And technically, that's page 58, and I did roll 59. Oh, well, this is interesting, actually. Well, everything's interesting if you find the right angle, I suppose, but infravision and ultravision replaced in... What was it? They start in third edition calling for dark vision, which took the problematic UC heat sources in the dark sort of thing. Because, yeah, if you go on YouTube and you look at infrared and you try to explain how people are seeing in infrared, you'd have to say that's goofy as heck. Well, I'll tell you what, let's have a look at what they actually say. That's a little tight. Sometimes the percentages are a little off on these things. Infravision and ultravision. Infravision, as explained in Player's Handbook, the Player's Handbook, infravision is the ability to see light waves in the infrared spectrum. Characters and various creatures with infravisual capability out to 60 feet standard are basically picking up radiation from their surroundings. Therefore, they note differences in thermal radiation, hot or cold. They do not see things which are the same temperature as their surroundings. Thus, a room in a dungeon might look completely blank, as walls, floors, ceiling, and possibly even wooden furniture within are all of the same temperature. Openings in the walls should show up rather plainly, as space anywhere else will, and if you are generous, you can allow different substances to radiate different differently even at the same temperature. The wood in the example above would be discernible if care was used in scanning the room infravisually. Note that air currents might show as cold or warm layers, except where very warm and very cold objects are concerned. Vision of this sort is roughly equal to human norm on a dark and cloudy night at best. Note also, monsters of a very cold or very warm sort, such as human, can be tracked infravisually by their footprints. Such tracking must occur within 2 rounds of their passing, or the temperature difference where they had trodden will dissipate. This is all interesting. So, any kind of movement, right, will is energy, produces energy, and thus the organic material moving through the air creates a sort of energy which should conceivably be picked up as heat, even if very slight. So the idea that I was always the thought, well, undead, they're not warm-blooded, so they don't produce any. You can't see them on infravision. Well, no, they move, so you should be able to see some difference in radiated heat. And I don't know. All of this is a little strange. It's easier just to say people can see in the dark, right? And not have to get into this whole thing. Tracking, I like the idea that you can track somebody by their footprints for a period of time after they've passed in the dark due to infrared, residual infrared heat. But light sources which give off heat are also absolutely prevent normal infravision from functioning within their sphere of illumination. What about as they get decreasingly dim? Explain this as the effect of trying to see in the dark whenever the observer is in a brightly lit area. It requires not less than 2 segments to accustom the eyes to infravision after use of normal vision. Interesting enough, creatures with visual capability of unusual nature, such as those which see infravisually to 90 feet, are actually emitting infrared radiation from their eyes and seeing what is within this visual range by receiving the reflected radiation. Such creatures can easily distinguish floor, ceiling walls, and other areas, as well as furnishings within an area. The eyes of all such creatures will appear as very brightly glowing red when observed by any other creature with standard infravision. Most monsters inhabiting the underground areas will have this form of infravision. Infravision outdoors enables individuals to see figures which are warm or cold at 100 to 300 feet, depending on temperature extremes. Vision is otherwise equal to a bright, starry night with full moonlight. So, vision is otherwise equal to a bright, starry night with full moonlight. That is what you can see outside if you have infravision at night. And so that kind of, it doesn't track with what they've already been saying. So there's a bit of a hand waving going on as to how this all actually works. There are some YouTube videos that you can go check out which discuss infravision and show what it is like to see with infravision using cameras with particular lenses This here, ultravision is the ability to see radiation above violet in the normal visible spectrum. Unless this ability is of highly unusual nature, so as to be able to see far into the spectrum, ultravision will not be useful underground where radiation is screened out. Without some source of ultravisual emanation. Magic weapons will shed illumination, spoil ultravisual capability, just as heat does infravision. Note, in Player's Handbook, ultravision enables the viewer to see outdoors at night as if he or she were in twilight, so vision extends clearly for about 100 yards, dimly to about 300. On particularly cloudy nights, ultravisual capability is reduced to about half normal, clear sight to 50 yards, dim to 150. So all of this is awkward. It's none of this is easy to actually. And of course, somebody will say, "Oh no, it's real easy. I do it all the time." Yeah, no, you don't, because you probably use it wrong in one way or another. You're probably using it wrong, and if we looked into it deeply, because a couple of times I've talked to people about it, and as soon as you examine closely what it is they say is so easy to do, it turns out that they're fudging in one way or another somewhere in the process of how they apply this to the game. So I will say that for our own part, groups I've played with since the beginning, 74, looked at this, and we tried to implement it in our own awkward young way. We ultimately just said, if you have infravision, you can see in the dark. If you don't, you can't. I think at 3rd edition they introduced low light vision, and then at some point they introduced, it might have been 3rd, they introduced dark vision, which was kind of a catch-all, and they got rid of infravision and ultravision as things, I think. Somewhere in that, I think maybe they kept them around in 3rd and then get rid of them in 3.5. I don't even remember at this point. But it was kind of an awkward transition. I remember there were a lot of online debates about how simple it was to use the old way, and how, truth be told, it's more likely that most people did it however they could get everybody to agree on at their table, or they handed down an edict as to how it worked ahead of time, even if it was somewhat fudged and everybody just agreed to use it that way, even if they disagreed with whether that interpretation was correct or incorrect, or dark vision and low light vision. Yeah, Death Angel's Shadow, he remembers remembers that. You know what, Jeff, we're going to throw you on the list. We're starting a new list today. I haven't had a chance to get a hold of the winner for this week. It is somebody I thought maybe they'd show up in chat, but maybe not on Sunday. We do another virtual Gamehole Con badge this from last week, and it's somebody that won one before, but they have kids who game, so we know that, or I know that anyway, and that means that they can probably use a second badge for that, maybe even a third. We'll see if they win a third. Pretty neat. You know, we're on week 26 now. We'll talk about this some more tomorrow. That's half the year, right? So this week, the 26th of September, will mark 6 months to the day that GaryCon should have been the first day of GaryCon. The physical GaryCon was canceled. It was the week, a couple days earlier, that the game store, like Geneva Games, closed down temporarily to accommodate dealing with the coronavirus in this COVID-19 era. We'll have some more discussions about that tomorrow, but we'll probably want to do some sort of commemorative. I know this is actually the 192nd episode because we've done more than one on a number of days or much earlier on in the process of doing this for the last 6 months. But we should probably do some sort of commemorative thing on the 26th. And I'm not sure what that will be. Tomorrow we do want to sign up. I think maybe I'll sign up for the virtual Greyhawk Con stuff live on the air tomorrow. I think that'll be fun. I need to do that anyway, and what better way than to make a show out of it? Virtual Greyhawk Con. It's coming up very quickly. Of course, it starts on the 2nd, so we're less than 2 weeks away. That's a week from this Friday, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Our virtual Greyhawk Con. And we'll call that a commercial in the middle of the show, right? Hey, Lexfire, how you doing? We just got done, I think people would say I was trashing. What would you say, Death Angel Shadow? Was I trashing infravision and ultravision? And generally kicking to the curb the way people would run them as being disingenuously accurate? Is that a way of putting it? I don't think I ever played in games where it worked the same way twice. Not exactly. I had some people discuss how it was done. Invariably, at conventions and such, when you'd have pre-gens and whatnot, there'd be some humans in the party, so you'd always have light sources, and I don't recall ever during a convention game shutting down the light sources and waiting 2 rounds for people's infravision that had it to kick in so they could utilize it in a way that was useful in game. So I think ultimately infravision and ultravision were great ideas. They're very cool ideas. They seem like cool ideas conceptually to give non-humans some advantages, especially those like dwarves or gnomes, for instance, in particular, for being able to see underground, because it is ostensibly their turf, and certainly monsters, various creatures being able to see underground. Well, why would they live underground if they couldn't see underground? You'd think they'd eventually evolve to living on the surface where they had light in 5e. That is, I think they throw around dark vision too much in 5e, says Death Angel Shadow. Well, you think they give it to too many beings, non-human player character choices all have it? No? Do halflings have it in 5e? I forget. I've run a few campaigns in 5e, but it's been quite some time, and I don't have the book right in front of me. But halflings were kind of the exception, right, in first edition when it came to infravision. Elves, dwarves, gnomes, half-orcs, for what it's worth. Not that I use them. But, and this next, and it's interesting, it's interesting when they intuitively put things together in the DMG such that it doesn't require you to jump around from place to place to find things that are correlated in one way or another, but it's interesting that right upon the heels of infravision and ultravision, they've put invisibility in how to deal with it, because I gotta tell you, invisibility is one of those crazy things. Hey, I like this. You know what? We're going to skip invisibility. I think we could do like a whole episode on invisibility and things that make things invisible and so on and so forth. Let's just jump over here and mention mirrors in regard to infravision and ultravision. Because of the way mirrors work, there has to be a light source. So mirrors are not going to be useful with infravision or ultravision, or for that matter, even in modern versions of the game with dark vision, right? I think humans and halflings and dragonborn don't have dark vision, says Death Angel Shadow, but almost every other playable race seems to. It's true, right? And are there many monsters, creatures, that don't also have it? It seems to be a thing. Just like in early editions, they could always open doors, even though player characters needed to do a door check to open doors, which, by the way, listening at doors. So vision is a thing. You know what? What time? What do we got? 22 minutes? I could read through this real quick and we could discuss it just a little bit. Invisibility. Now I'll sneak up on the monster invisibly, has often been the cry rung forth from eager players in your campaign. How often have you cursed because of it? Never fear. There are many answers to the problems of invisibility, and most difficulties will be resolved after you read the following rules and suggestions regarding the subject. Invisibility is not what most players desire it to be. It is neither a soundproofing nor an odor preventative. Sense was brought in 3rd edition as a specific thing with a game mechanic, so that would have been useful. It's a little more arbitrary in 1st edition. Monsters might well be able to hear, smell, or see the invisible character. Furthermore, the associates of the invisible party are not able to see him or her any better than foes are, so this could cause problems too. Now consider a silence spell and large area invisibility cast upon a party. Imagine the chaos within the area as characters stub their toes on the heels of the person before them, with the inability to hear anything, so that falls, suggestions as to what should be done, or orders cannot be heard. Consider also that dust on the floor will betray most invisibility, as will dust or powder in the air. Hence, classic D&D players coming up with at a convention always saying, look, can I pick up a bag of flour? Think of a door opening without any visible cause. Will this cause suspicion in the mind of the viewer, particularly when surroundings are taken into account? You bet it will, says Gary. Invisibility spells are broken when attack occurs. But what about devices? Becoming invisible takes a twinkling. But if the party is observed doing so, there is no reason why an opponent cannot attack with the standard penalty -4 for inability to see the target. Likewise, becoming visible takes only a second, but thereafter the foe is able to clearly observe the attacker for a return of the compliment, as it must be assumed that it requires a full round to again activate the magic which enables the character to be non-visible. Invisibility to animals, its own thing, a spell. The 1st level druid spell does not allow attack, but it is pretty well proof against stupid animals. Invisibility devices, Gary's words, not mine. Generally duplicate the spell or else make the user likely to be undetected that turn or round. Indetectability being stated as a percentage chance. Check each period as applicable under the situation. Dust of disappearance does not negate sound nor odor either. So it is basically the same as an invisibility spell, which allows invisible attack. That is to say, the dust of disappearance allows for invisible attack, while the spell does not. Psionic invisibility is a mind control ability, the shadow knows, which is more similar to the druidic invisibility to animals, for the affected creature or creatures does not notice sounds or odors from the psionic. Note, however, that this form of invisibility is sharply limited in that it works only on a set maximum number of creatures according to their combined levels / hit dice. In no event is the thief ability to hide in shadows to be treated the same as invisibility in regards to disappearance. See character class thief abilities for further details. Finally, we have the consideration of ability to detect invisible creatures even though they are not actually seen. This is explainable as the observer's ability to note a minor disturbance in the air, a shimmering haze, or by keen hearing or keen sense of smell. The table below gives the probability of detection of invisibility according to level and hit dice. Intelligence ability rating, level or hit dice of creature, it starts at 7, 7, and 7 plus. Intelligence. So you may give unintelligent creatures with keen hearing or a sense of smell. Everything has a sense of smell, so how good does it have to be? With keen sense of smell, that must be one of those adjectives being used for both. The equivalent of intelligence to reflect detection of invisible creatures. So very low percentage for a very high intelligence at 7 plus hit dice for level or creature. Check each round. The creature is exposed to invisibility. Once detected, the invisible creature will be kept track of thereafter, as the detector will be able to note the cause. Any attacks occur at -4 penalty on the attacking on invisible opponent, of course. Of attacking an invisible opponent. Of course, the invisible creature likewise is entitled to a +4 on saving throws. Okay, that's interesting too. I didn't recall that plus on saving throws. That's interesting. I guess that takes into account that they're being targeted by spells, maybe? What about area effect spells? I don't think they should get it for that. Anywho, suffice to say, if you use infravision by the letter of the law, then invisibility should make any difference to something. If it's in the dark and something has infravision, then it should make no difference, right? Anyway, we can see how that's problematic too. I just let people not be seen. I take into consideration if they make noise. That's a whole different thing. I take into consideration if they stink. Because let's face it, a dog is going to be able to pick up on the smell of a person, particularly if they're an adventurer who's been marching around in the wilderness for weeks on end and is finally getting back to town. Any kind of vigorous activity which causes you to sweat is going to create an odor that others will pick up on if they are not already inundated with being around you all the time. So other adventurers in your party might be so used to your smell that they just kind of mentally mask it out because they're used to being around you all the time. Smell is big. Our dog is blind and she picks up a banana being eaten in the other room and investigates. Yeah, no doubt. Bananas are pretty pungent too, but it's true enough that she probably picks up on other things and just ignores them because she's used to those smells being around. But when a creature comes up to somebody who is new, they pick up on that smell. And that's just the way that creatures are. So there's all sorts of things that are judgment calls when people talk about trying to, how with second and then third edition and fourth, how they were essentially trying to create rules that made, essentially made dungeon mastering simpler, um, almost to the point of trying to reduce the role of the dungeon master to nothing more than a record keeper and somebody who was reading box text and letting people do their thing. Then stuff like this makes it very obvious how difficult that job is to write rules to eliminate that position or even to reduce it in a meaningful way, because things like this will come up all the time. Even in modern editions, I don't think they've found ways to completely mitigate the need for adjudication. In any event, let's say this. It is time to say goodbye. So we will do so by saying thank you very much to everybody who is in the stream today. Thank you also for chiming in when you got the chance, if you could. And I appreciate that. I will say, come on back tomorrow for Weekly News and Announcements Day. That's Monday. We've got cartography and world building on Tuesday, campaign discussion on Wednesday, GMing tips on Thursday, building adventures on Friday, GM reviews on Saturday, and of course, back around the horn to rules retrospective next Sunday. Maybe we'll look specifically at listening. Opening doors and listening at doors? Should we do doors? Let's try to do doors next week. And that's a broad enough subject that we should be able to deal with it in a couple different ways. Hey, if you're catching up with us on YouTube, thank you very much. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and give us a thumbs up on the video you're watching, and also any videos you watch. Heck, make a comment. You got something to say? Some sort of witticism or constructive criticism? We'd appreciate it. Anything that makes the show better is always useful to us. Thanks again to everybody. This has been the OK Grognard Show from beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Bye-bye.